Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. If you're new here, my name is Amy, I'm a full-time artist, and today I want to take you with me for setting up my new gouache palette. I splurged and I got myself 12 tubes of Holbein gouache. I didn't really know what to expect. The only other kind of gouache I tried was the 𝕰𝖐𝖚 palette, and I wasn't very satisfied with it. I checked a lot of videos and reviews, and Holbein gouache really stood out to me. So, yeah, I ordered 12 tubes, mostly focusing on primary colors. I will list all the colors that I selected in the description, and I will also mention them when we are going to swatch them together a bit later. The palette I chose to create this is the Meeden Art Empty Watercolor palette with the 48 pans. I wanted to set up a dry gouache palette. I know it's not how you're really supposed to use gouache. I know it's more pigmented and opaque when used fresh from the tube, but I really like the convenience of a dry palette. It's like the best from watercolor with the opacity of acrylics. And I use both. I use a watercolor, but I always get a bit frustrated that I cannot achieve the opacity I want and that I cannot layer colors as much as I would like to. And acrylics, I get all the opacity I need and want, but it's a pain to set up. And because of my ADHD, if a task requires too many steps, then I will have like kind of a task initiation problem and I will just avoid it and not do it. So I really don't mind compromising a little bit on the opacity and pigmentation of the gouache if that means that I will be able to use it like instantly with just a little bit of water reactivation. So where you see the swatches, they are blobs of color that dried on my notebook that I rehydrate with water. And look at the vibrancy of these colors. I am so happy. So the color I chose were primary magenta, brilliant orange, permanent yellow deep, primary yellow, leaf green, olive green, dark green, Prussian blue, primary cyan, burnt umber, ivory black, and permanent white. I got the biggest tube because I do like to create my own color mixes. This is the second piece I created with the gouache, and I must say, so far, I am very satisfied with this product. I enjoy having the possibility to either use it as watercolor, like with a lot of water, so I can create um, basic shapes and put down a wash of the color that I want on my subject, like I'm doing here. I use a lot of water just to be able to put the green on the leaf, and it allows me to, um, well, just create the basic shape of the subject. And this is, by the way, the sticker design of my mail club for June. I really enjoy to be able to work in layers. The paint does reactivate a little bit if I overwork the paper, and this allows for the best color mixing directly on the paper. It's super fun to make gradients that way, and I haven't experienced this with either watercolor or acrylics. So yeah, I'm very happy to be able to discover this new medium. It's super fun to use. And as you can see here, it's also very easy to go on top with a lighter color to create details, and like I'm doing right there with the veins of the leaves. Um, it's super bright and pigmented, super opaque. Even if it's from a dry palette, I'm able quite easily to reactivate them and have the opacity that I want. With a very tiny brush, I like to do more details. I've always really liked the spiral as a symbol, and I'm trying to incorporate it more in my art lately. And yeah, I like making them a little bit wiggly, almost like they are made out of vines or branches. And so, yeah, I drew one right in the middle of the dandelion puff. And to add more textures and details and contrast, I like to use colored pencil on top of the gouache. And I do use it with my other mediums too. And yeah, I think it works very well on gouache also. Um, I don't think it works better than with other mediums, but I'm very happy that I can continue to work with this medium on top of my paint. Okay, so I did procrastinate quite a lot, and I'm back a month after. But this is actually allowing me to show you more finished piece that I did with the gouache. And I also want to show you the state of the palette right now. So what I did is, since I didn't fill the whole 48 pans with gouache, I included my watercolor also in there. So the first section on the top is the gouache, and then there are my watercolors, also from Holbein. And yeah, this is what it looks like a month after. So you can see that from drying, uh, quite a lot of them actually cracked. Um, it doesn't really bother me, just some of them did crack so much that some loose pieces are flying around if I try to carry it in my bag. Um, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I don't travel with this palette that much, so I really don't mind it. So as you can see, I also did some custom mixes. There's a lot of colors that I like to use very often, especially greens, because I do a lot of landscapes and I wanted them ready and yeah, ready to use. So I mixed them myself. And I have, yeah, I think I have some swatches to show you in there. So here they are. Whoop. You can see on the top is the original color I got in the tubes. And then all the ones down here are the ones that I created from mixing the paint together. So yeah, lots of swampy greens and some browns, and also a couple of pastel colors. Whenever I draw flowers, I like to have them around. So yeah, I think it does. I do go through colors way faster than when I use watercolor. These watercolors I had for I think maybe more than 6 years now, and I never refilled one of them. Granted, I don't use them as often as the gouache, but as you can see, some of the pans are already almost empty, and I think it's because when I reactivate it, I have to use quite a lot of water, and it's like digging into the pan. And yeah, you have to use like more of a creamy consistency to get the opacity you want for the gouache. While watercolor, you can just put a little bit of water in it and it reactivates and like fill the whole um, subject you want with one wash of color. So yeah, we'll definitely have to refill them more often, but that's okay. Is there something else? I'm still very happy with the opacity that I get, even though it's a dry palette. So yeah, overall, I'm very, very satisfied with this medium, and I used it quite a lot uh, in the last month, and I will show you some of the work I did with it. Okay, starting there actually. This is the one you saw me paint uh, in the middle of the video. I did change it a little bit, adding a pink background and also doing the stars a different shape and a different color. Then I did this one. These, no, these are not gouache, excuse me. This is gouache, but used more in a watercolor way. Then yeah, there we are. So this is a Draw This in Your Style challenge that I hosted for my 1K follower on Instagram. And it was so fun to draw, to paint using the gouache for these. It's like the gradients I can get with this paint is amazing, and I really enjoy working with it. Doing the skin, I was afraid of drawing skin with it because I thought it would be like patchy or something, but no, it's actually very buttery smooth, and it's blending. The colors are blending together very nicely. And then there's this one. So this is actually a Draw This in Your Style challenge hosted by Anya. I will link her Instagram in the description. So this is also done with gouache. This one also. And for this one, I use my acrylic technique, which means I did a wash of vermilion red in the background, and then layered all the other colors on top, getting more refined and detail with each layers, and I am super happy with the result. And these are the most recent ones. So this landscape and this tree. What I really like about the gouache is that you can get a little bit messy at first, and it's a very trust the process thing, because there's always an ugly painting moment, and then when you layer and layer and layer, you get to actual details that creates the piece and make it very cohesive. And yeah, I really love and enjoy the process of painting with gouache. And do I have something else? I think, yeah, I think that's it. It's a very nice medium. I would highly recommend it. And I think the Holbein gouache are amazing. I love the opacity, the pigmentation, everything about them. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye bye, guys.